So everybody, hey, thank you, F-Bombs, for having me on here. My name is Cypher, and I am a YouTube and political streamer under the moniker of Crowdsourced Politics. Those are my two channels. I do a news roundup weekly at Thursdays, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also cover foreign affairs on Sundays and general stuff on Saturdays like this. You could basically say I'm kind of on the lib-left spectrum of the political spectrum, but I'm a little more heterodox than most people would anticipate. So glad to be here.
Awesome. Are you streaming?
I am streaming. Would you like me not to?
No. I just didn't know. I wasn't going to introduce myself to people that are on my stream.
For sure.
I'm F-Bombs for you. F-Bombs is an acronym, stands for Facts Based on My Brain, because I think we have confused the word fact with opinion, and that's the world we're living in now, and we must adjust. Thus, I like having conversations like this. My political ideology, I don't even know where I am because I just don't fit. Like, I am a retired, I had a sign shop, sold my sign shop, sold a house I had. I've been retired for a while. I own part of a weed business that sells pink papers and all kinds of paraphernalia. I just own some of it. I don't work there. So I have a weird political mix. But typically can find something. If I have to argue, I can argue. If I have to agree, I can agree. Just a mix of that. So how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanksgiving was okay. Part of my family got COVID, so we didn't actually have Thanksgiving dinner, but it's okay. I was able still to take my mom out to eat, see my brother. It was good stuff. Went and saw AFI on Monday, so that was good. Other than that, not much going on. Streaming and trying to keep up with the Twitter nonsense.
What are your thoughts on that leak?
It's nothing. So the reason I say it's nothing isn't because of the fact that it's a lot of rehash and things that I understood to be how Twitter worked and every social media company and every media company for that matter. No, it's nothing because of the fact that the tweets that got deleted after Biden's team contacted Twitter were of Hunter Biden's dick. That's what they were. Every single one of them.
This makes even more.
Yeah, go ahead.
We probably need to look at this in a better way. Conservatives typically right now are obsessed with genitalia. So why would they not be obsessed with Hunter's cock? It's still right there, right?
Yeah. No, you have like, a good point.
I mean, we just got to learn how to think like each other.
Yeah, it pisses me off specifically though, because I don't like Matt Taibbi as like a commentator, but I thought he was still a journalist, right? I thought he still did like investigations and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, it's fine. He was contacted, like even in my announcement on there, it's like, hey, everybody, go read it for yourself. Figure out what's going on. I said it in my channel. I posted it on things, and I said that this isn't nothing. I said this is nothing, but you make your own determination. And then somebody pointed it out that you could go to the Internet Archives and look up what those tweets were. And I'm like, yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I did it because I wasn't going to trust anybody to not be a political scuzzbucket, and I should have done the same thing with Taibbi because he didn't look. He made it sound like that Republicans had less leeway in getting Twitter to delete things than anybody else did. And Biden's team was literally just pointing out the fact that Biden's son's dick was everywhere and it violated Twitter's TOS. And all this was like basically an important person's able to point out, hey, this violates TOS. We think this violates TOS. Can you look at it? And the person look at it and like, yeah, it violated TOS. We're going to delete it. That's it. That's all that happened. There's like 8 tweets in that screenshot, and every single one of them is and ironically from a Chinese account, mind you.
Well, so I'm very conspiratorial. To me, this is like one of the toughest things to keep myself grounded, because I can attribute almost anything that happens in society that isn't real to like algorithm and manipulation.
Okay.
Um, because I don't know, we were talking about this earlier actually. Like, if somebody believes a bunch of lies, does it make it not real? And I think we don't look at that from the other person's perspective, only our own. So, like, if since you're left of center at least, let's say the belief you have is that you must behave a certain way and have these very strict beliefs, or you're going to burn in eternal damnation.
Oh, I see what
And
you're saying.
that is the existence you live in. But I see that as nonsense because that's the existence I live in.
Right.
If I just tell the religious person their God is dumb, it doesn't exist, you're dumb, we don't
Yeah.
get to do anything.
No, yeah, you can't just come in. Yeah, I totally agree with you. You can't just come in, start swinging, call people morons, right? What you have to do is you have to be like, okay, like, why do you think that? Okay, did you think of it this way? And I've had good success in getting people to change their mind, at least in the moment. I can't say if online everything's ephemeral, right? You can't know if somebody like doubled down a minute later or what have you.
Well, you can't know, but this brings us to something interesting. And I knew we would end up getting here. I didn't think it would be immediately. Um, I work on my life history is sales and training trainers.
Okay.
So I understand how to activate people's emotions to increase the likelihood of them behaving in a certain way.
Sure.
That's what sales and marketing is. Accepting that as a reality into today's world has been helpful to me because in sales, it doesn't matter what I have, it matters what they need.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
I'm going to communicate with somebody, the next part of that is if they disagree, like if they're automatically arguing with me, if I say it, it's a lie. If they say it, it must be true. So I do very little time trying to present an argument to the contrary. I would rather it come from you contradicting yourself because that's the best way for it to last. Because you might be able to explain it when you leave.
Yeah, yeah. No, and what I meant by that was like I can't know if they like interacted with their friends and they got convinced of that their original position was true at the end of the day. That's all I meant by that. No, you're 100% correct.
No, and I'm complete. It's like I look at it like an old piano. Like a 20-year-old piano has been out of tune forever. Somebody comes and tunes it, it sounds phenomenal until like the next morning, and then it's out of tune again. So you need to train it back. But if it tuned itself, it would probably stay a little bit better. Like when I train people, I went off a process called learn one, do one, teach one. If I need to show them how to make a road sign, I'll explain it to them as I do it.
Yeah.
Then I'll explain it to them as they do it. And then I'll have them explain it to me while I do it. And I will only do what they explain to me. And if they can get me through it, then they know every step and can explain it.
Yeah,
once we're there, I can leave them alone. And to me, there are some ways we do see it. Like I end my stream the same way every time. When I start that video, people start saying goodbye. It's Pavlovian at this point. So we are in a small enough space that you see some of it, which we do have to drop a desire to see change in a conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I just to be clear, this was like a Facebook debate, so it's a little different than that's why I was trying to say like online, different mediums are going to have different things, right? So with this particular one that I was referencing, I was talking to a person that was like, my grandfather immigrated to the country when he was 2 back in 1922. He was considered an immigrant his whole life, and I'm like, was he though? I'm like, okay, your dad immigrated when he was 2. He grew up in America, right? And he was like, yeah. Okay. And he was socialized in America and he took on American cultural things. So what does that make him? Like, it was like, this is a long story short. Like, there was like 3 or 4 messages back and forth. And then at the end of it, he's like, well, I guess he was an American. I'm like, thank you. That's what the dreamers are. And he's like, okay, I can see that. And I'm like, okay, cool. This was like a breakthrough. But to understand if that stuck, I have no idea because I'm not interacting with him again. So
it's the media thing is one I struggle with. People have to constantly remind me Twitter's not the place to resolve it.
Twitter's where you go to dunk. Twitter's where you go to dunk because there's like 8,000 people agreeing with the one person you're disagreeing with, and that just reinforces their thing, right? It is a psychological thing, and I talked to V Radio about this, and he brought it up, and I'm like, yes, we're on the same page here. We know what we're talking about, right? If you get like, I think it's the cutoff is like, if there's less than 10 people, the person is more likely to stick to their guns if they know that they're right. But if there's more than 10 people, they're more likely to go with the crowd. And on Twitter, on Facebook, on like public pages and stuff like that, give me 100 people and I'll make sure that nobody changes their mind about anything. That's all you need. Like, it's ridiculous. And it reinforces it too.
Okay. Did you have a topic you wanted or
no? I don't
want to keep you from something if you had an idea.
No. Your person was like, hey, you want to talk about free speech with F-bombs? I'm like, sure. So
okay.
like,
I just wanted to make sure like you didn't have something specific.
No.
So that is something that I'm battling with, is regardless of side. So in a lot of the research I've done, whether it be from Gamergate through Q to whatever, something I come across is middle ground makes you opposition to everybody.
Yeah.
Is there a way to reduce that when you, like, do you know, like, as I said, I can either agree or disagree. And if we want to find reasons to agree, fine. But if I'm going to look at something core and we disagree, we might agree on 20% and disagree on 80%.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really hard to play middle on at least text exchanges. So if you're on Facebook, Twitter, if you're on Reddit, wherever it is, a comment section on a YouTube channel, right? It's really hard to play middle and make any breakthrough because you're going to be shit on by both sides, essentially. Like, you're not going to make any leeway. On like a panel, it's actually much easier to do because people can read your face. They can see that you're being sincere. They can read your body language if you're actually thinking and giving them deference, because nobody can see that in text, right? They can't see that you're like, okay, let me type. Like, they can't see that stuff, right? So they don't understand that you're doing the things that are actually hearing them out, right? You're not repeating back to them what, make sure they're saying, what have you. So I don't know if it's really, like, I don't know if text is really a good medium for that, unless it's a very small group. I've found that on groups, debate groups, if there's less than 300 members, and because most of those people are going to be lurkers anyways, so 300 members or less, usually you'll have a core group of 20 or 30 people arguing or discussing anything, and the rest of them are lurkers. They'll come in every once in a while. If you have that many people or fewer, you're more likely to be able to be like, hey, I'm seeing where both of you are coming from. Can we bridge this gap? And people are like, oh yeah, that's cool. Because it's the same people seeing you over and over again, so they can kind of learn how you are. But if it's thousands of people, no one's paying attention to what anybody is. They don't follow your post. They don't know who you are. They see the avatar and that's it. And they're looking at what you're saying in that moment, and that's all they're going to do.
Would you say it's fair to categorize that as being humanized?
Categorize what as being humanized exactly?
You've existed in this small group where you're recognizable enough that you're a person.
Yeah.
Not an unidentifiable blank entity.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it's also comes with just time. So even in like a larger group, if you're like super active, people will learn you over time, right? But if you're like the one odd man out in that group, then everybody will get reinforced by one person calling you a piece of shit or stupid or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, well, this guy's dumb because that guy said he's dumb, and there's like 3 other people that said it, so I shouldn't listen to this person. Like it's all social animal bullshit.
I agree with that. I do think there's something there as ways to reduce it. And I can't speak to results, but I've been trying to do something that I see duplicate sometimes not. But I try to always, if the first thing I say in chat is like some sort of snide remark, it'll always then be followed by the greeting. But I try to enter chat by saying hello to the streamer and hello to the chat. So that's a text medium for me. It's more interactive, but it's still a text medium. But by doing that and acknowledging them, I translate that here. And most people do come in here and say hello to people, and moderators say hello to people. And it creates it in a sales environment when somebody's coming to buy a car. I was 4th generation in the car business. So they're coming to buy a car. They do not want to be manipulated. They've already discussed before they get there, they're not buying anything today. So they're basically in this like hands crossed, closed up position. And everything I can do from that moment, from the moment they get within first place I'm allowed to put a sign to inside the facility, that changes the dynamic and sets the dynamic of how that interaction even begins. If you're trying to go to a new therapist, personal example, I'm trying to go to a new therapist. They're in a complex. The complex has shitty signs. I don't know where I'm going. I finally find the building. There's no wayfinding sign. There's no directory. I'm so pissed off by the time I get into the therapist, it wastes half that first session, and I might never go back to that person. Conversely, very well signed place, very easy to find, all relaxing. I get inside, there's music, water, everything else. The likelihood of success of that session is greatly increased.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Change every time? No, but if we can do that micro place, it does lead to actual studied change. Like you go into a Walmart, do they still greet you at Walmart?
I haven't been in a Walmart in a while, but I think some places do, some places don't.
Okay, so the reason that started was an attempt and successful. Well, I don't know if it was designed to do it or if it was just a noticed result, but when they started using greeters, it led to like a 10% reduction in pilfering because they realized it humanized the activity by being greeted and the sticker. It put a human to the interaction. It reduced theft. And my thought is the more we do human activities, if I walk into a room, I'm not just going to start insulting people, right? I'm going to walk in and, hi, how are you? I think if that becomes more normal of a behavior, subtly, it's a small thing that does lead to less confrontation up front, just a tiny little thing.
You know, I think you're not wrong. I just think that there's an issue with scale. So with the Twitch community, there's maybe 200 people in chat on any given stream, unless it's like a giant, unless it's like Destiny, right?
Yeah, right.
Maybe like right now I have like 3 people watching me because I'm a nobody. But you have like, I don't know, I just looked through it really quick and you have like
I just clicked the button.
30
I had no
or 40.
idea. Yeah.
Maybe 30 or 40. It's a lot easier to interact with that many people than it is to interact with 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people.
Agreed.
And when you're on like Twitter, when you're on Twitter, it's just like go to Tim Pool's tweets or whatever, any of his tweets, there's like 2,000 comments. And then so you're going into one comment and you're going to reply to that person. Like, what are they going to do? They're there for him, so they all have the same bias.
I'll tell you what I do with them, right? When I make a video on Tim Pool, I go into Tim Pool's comments and I share the video with people that agree with my opinion, and I grow my YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's what you can do. You can do that. It's called. I know what this is called. It's market leaking, right?
I don't know. It's spam. It's kind of what they call it.
Yeah, it's using somebody else's marketing that they already have done their audience to market yourself. It's like market leaking or something is the term from marketing's perspective.
Okay, yeah. So I agree with you. See, this is where I get stuck, and this is, it's funny because it is futile while it's also not. So, from one perspective, when I owned my sign shop and I was real small, I bought a failing sign franchise, and we went from like 60 grand. We went from like under 200 a year to over 700 a year.
Nice.
Before I sold it. And the thing, when we were really small and I didn't know what I was doing, when a big company came to you and they would ask you for something like, can you do up these designs and we'll look at them, and if we like them, we'll buy it. Well, I charge $100 an hour for design time. Who am I charging that to? I guess I'm eating what I would be charging that so that I can get the designer to bid for this job. But when I earned that job, they've now set the precedent that this is how we have to behave. That I now have to give up design time every single time they want me to bid something. So if I don't set a precedent when it's futile, inconvenient even, then how do I set the precedent later when it's bigger? So doing things on a minor scale that you would like to duplicate on a major scale always has to be where we start. We don't make big action ever, like ever.
Sure.
You don't get a 10-run home run.
No, I don't disagree with that. It just takes an entirely different approach than what most people are honestly capable of. And I don't mean this like to be elitist or anything.
No, I don't disagree with you.
It takes a measure of patience that even like my wife says I'm one of the most, like, I'm not even bragging here. She says I'm one of the most patient people she knows. Like, I try to not get frustrated like at anything. And just with like this Matt Tabby thing, or Tabibi thing, I lost my cool, man. Like, and if I'm just going in there and saying you're a fucking liar, how am I supposed to expect other people that
not every interaction. I'm giving a standard that isn't based in like 100% like, obviously we're all people, and
yeah,
sometimes we do just want to go call somebody a fuck shit. Like,
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But like when I do things, my head looks so far down the road. This is a gift and a curse, right? Because it's hard to enjoy just the moment of doing something when the moment of doing something is a brick in the house also.
Right.
So to me, the moment is fun, but also so important that it could put you an entire day's work behind building that house.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a balance. I think, do you find there's times where you look at an well, obviously I'm sure you do, but there are times where you say something and then you realize, okay, wait, maybe I was the aggressor and I was wrong.
So I'm kind of full of myself to a degree. I won't lie about, like, I try to be humble, but at the same time I'm like, I don't like admitting I'm wrong. But I will say that oftentimes when that happens, it might have not been me being wrong about what I thought was correct, but what I thought was correct to not be correct. Does that make sense? So in the moment, it seemed like I was being 100% correct. And then I'm like, I realized, oh, I wasn't. Let me go in and eat some humble pie. And I feel like that does a lot to get people to be engendered to you as a person, especially if you're interacting on a smaller level. And on streams, best way to do that. Like, just, hey, if you're in a debate with somebody, right? So I did this with Rob Nord, believe it or not. Rob Nord's like, hey, go look at this thing and tell me if I'm right. And I was like, fine, I'll do it. I'll do it. If you're right, I will go eat some humble pie and I'll tag you in a tweet, right? And I did. I was like, hey man, you said this, I said it this way, you meant it this way. So you're right here. My bad, right? And what does he respect me? Probably not. Am I going to debate him again? Yeah, he invited me on to debate him again. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay. So, this is actually a beautiful discussion. Okay, so first of all, we were talking about CTV, and I said CTV coming back, he rides a horse that's just 3 Rob Nords. You know who CTV is?
I know who CTV is. That was a good joke. Yeah.
Okay, so with somebody like Rob Nord, you just brought up a point that we were actually discussing right before this. When there's something, the Hunter Biden story, why won't the part of the narrative would be, why won't the left acknowledge that they were trying to use their influence to get these pictures removed?
I don't care about the pictures.
I'll ask you, why won't the left do that? Why won't the left do that?
So the left won't do that because the left believes that the pictures shouldn't have been posted online in the first place. The pictures in question here are of a naked man that was spread all across the internet, where people made fun of him for being a crack addict and a person that was down on his luck, and that should just not be what we accept as a society. I don't see why the right wing cares about not the Hunter Biden story per se, but any of these images that were removed, because if you go look them up, it was, like I said, it's just his dick being removed from Twitter, and that violates Twitter toss, and that violates
Here's what
consent.
happens. You and I agree totally. But let me just show you what happened. They're Christian, and you said God's not real. Why won't you just admit God's real? I know it's not the same conversation, but it is core-wise, emotionally, the same thing that happened.
Oh, yeah, I know. I realize it. So you can say that the Hunter Biden story was mishandled, and I think that's clear, because it was like a group of people didn't know what the fuck they were doing, and they decided to censor it, didn't go to the boss, and then the boss came in and be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. They doubled down, and then it took them, we're going to find out more today, I guess. I don't know exactly when it's being launched. Whatever, Elon Musk is playing games. But, they mishandled it. Is that nefarious, though? I don't think that's nefarious. That's where we're going to disagree.
Okay, so that takes us back to, you asked, would Rob do that for you? I don't think so. I mean, there might be situations that he might, but I don't think he would. And so this is where it leads to this cycle of, why would I do that if you're not going to do it? Yep. Why would I do it if you're not going to do it?
Oh my God. Okay. So the show you left when we were on with Vivian and Wick and V Radio and Wiggy Wick.
Yeah, I was going to get there. I'm glad you went there.
Okay. So did you see my conversation with Wiggy Wick that happened a week after? I haven't downloaded it yet. I have to rip it from his YouTube channel.
No, I have not.
Okay. In that conversation, I said, hey, right-wingers are doing to Groomer what right-wingers disagreed with on leftist with racist. You're making the word not mean anything. The response was, oh, so you're allowed to do it and I'm not. I'm like, that's not the point. Why are you being spiteful? Do you agree that this shouldn't happen or not?
No, I see. This is where
I didn't say that.
No. But this is where my point of view on this is so hard to get across. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. I left not out of anger. I left out of obligation to my principle. So what I mean by this is, so we were just watching Never Play Defense from the alt-right playbook. I think it's like episode 4. Okay, so
I'm aware. I don't know if I've watched that one, but I'm aware of the series.
Okay, so the key to it is they are not there to be correct. They're not there to convince you. They are simply there to argue.
Mhm.
Once somebody shows me their intent is the argument, my compensation for that conversation has ended. Because we're no longer having an actual conversation. You're not going to be good faith. So no point I make from there on out will ever matter. So the compensation to me in that conversation has ended. And all of it is to them. And that's all they want, is to have the conversation. They don't want anything other than that. So I did it incorrectly. I should have more explicitly stated why I had to leave.
Right.
Because then it at least makes like sense, and nobody sets that narrative for me, which is what I had to accept, which is fine.
Yeah. Everybody, you're just looked
bad.
It
is what it
badly.
is.
I tried to explain it to a degree, but they weren't going to hear it. So I'm like, okay.
No, but that's why I left, because nothing you explain they're going to hear, because they're not there to hear things. They're only there to argue. So you're chasing the rabbit. Well, that's okay. If you're Chud and you're there to argue that for content, like if you're there to argue,
I like getting, just to be clear, I like getting synthesis, but I love to argue, right? And so I want to be able to understand where a person is coming from and not necessarily win by like destroying them in a debate. It's not like that. It's more like along the lines of, I want to argue and articulate my point and play the game of rhetoric in order to find out what truth actually is from a philosophical standpoint. And hey, every debate I'm in, it doesn't matter who the person is, they might have something to offer that can reveal to me a better understanding of not only myself, but of the world in large. So that's why I'm there. I'm there to argue, but the goal isn't the argument in and of itself. It's all the stuff to go along with it. So that's why I won't turn down debates mostly. I will turn them down if I'm not interested in the conversation. I almost turned Rob down, but I ended up getting him to agree to debate policy. Because when I had a debate with him the first time, I'm like, hey, next time we meet together, let's have a debate on policy. And so I don't remember what this was. I got one of his fans to follow me on Twitter. And so he's like, haha, blah, 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 blah. And Rob's like, haha, you're an idiot. You called this guy a liar and like, whatever. I'm like, okay. Like I said that, that they were not, I said they were a liar, and then they revealed the information. We can't keep up with all the information that exists in the world. I'm sorry. I didn't realize fucking, the particular thing of this one was the zip cuff guy supposedly picked those off of a cop in the Jan 6.
Well, there's two. There were two zip tie guys.
The particular one that I was talking about supposedly is the one that picked it up off of a cop.
Brock or the other one? Brock or the one that was there with his mom?
The guy that was there with his mom. That's the one that they referenced.
The real zip tie guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brock, who got convicted, he brought him with him.
Yeah.
So they were in the same chamber.
Yeah, but the people that everybody pointed to, that LARPer dude that had him in his hand, that was the other guy, right? So, yeah,
well,
this
is where you got owned in the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah,
because that zip tie guy found him.
Yep.
Right.
And I'm like,
oh, got him.
But I did say. I did get him to agree to do, he said, whatever you want to talk about. So I know he's not interested in actually talking about necessarily policy. I'm going to have to figure out a thing that we can talk about that we might be able to reach agreement on.
I have a request for you to set policy like Mitch McConnell.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. Well, my friends, we have to talk about policy differences between ourselves and the Democratic Party.
Oh, this guy, he now wants to talk policy. I've been here, 100 years?
That's good. Oh my God, we could have a debate like that. It'd be so funny.
I'm really thinking about hosting Social Truth as Bernie's centrist cousin.
Oh, that's great.
My cousin is crazy. Thinks you should get gallbladder surgery for free.
Your producer is saying don't encourage you to do that.
I know he is. I know he is. That's his job, to antagonize you into doing it. Okay. But this does bring us, I do say, and I should make this like a thing up front. I don't believe there is one road to change. I believe there are dozens of avenues. Many of them are required for massive change. Lots of tiny little actions that come together in a bunch of different ways. It's ludicrous to believe that I would know the way. Like, give me the golden glow. Like, it's hubris for us to think everybody should agree with what we do. And at the same time, it doesn't mean we shouldn't argue the reasons we do what we do, and somehow finding ways, if we're like verbally doing that, to humanize each other. Like, my intent in this is this, not to this. Like,
no, I get you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I get you. I just think there are some things though that are just proven to be rhetorically counterproductive, and I think that needs to be pointed out. For example, when you're debating a person that's a disingenuous actor, maybe ridicule is the proper is ridicule and destroying them in a debate because they're not being a genuine person. But you can't take that to the entirety of how you argue with everybody, because all you're going to do is cause resentment and entrenchment or re-entrenchment. I don't know which way to say it, but basically they fall back into their default position and get more entrenched in that. And I think there's not enough people that understand the difference between the two, and they always default to just trying to own the other person, and that is actually counterproductive. And we can see that when people talk to white people that don't understand racism as well as they do, when they're like, well, you're just being a racist. That's not effective. It doesn't matter if they are being racist. It's not effective. So you're not actually pushing the needle forward in your direction. You're being counterproductive to it.
So it's interesting because a sad piece of reality is, if you are trying to move people to your direction, you have to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And when you're marginalized and you want people to understand that,
yes,
you have to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Like
I'm 100%. Yeah. Just, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting a lot, and I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'll pull it back.
It's the shrooms. No.
So, I just to be clear, I don't expect anybody in a marginalized community that has to deal with this as a day-to-day to actually do the heavy lifting. I will say, hey, I think that if you're not able to, then maybe it's best if you don't engage in some instances. That's as at the most that I'll say. Maybe in some instances. I'm not saying all the time. I'm not going to tone police people like that. But if you're a white guy, a cis hetero white guy, you can do the heavy fucking lifting. You don't deal with it every day. So you can be the patient one to actually deal with it. And people don't get that. Even white women don't get that. Like, the thing that spurred this on is that there was this, like, somebody made a fake text exchange where it was like a white guy like messaging a woman about something, and I guess they're like dating or something. And he says something that's like a little bad, like a leftist would consider a little bad, like, oh, I think, people should just be able to say what they want or something like that, right? I don't remember the particulars. It moves over to where she's in her group chat and she's like, I can't believe that this person just said this. And everybody's like, get him, girl. Like, you tell him, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then she goes back over and she just like lays into him. And in this, it lays into him, but then like pulls back a little bit. And he's like, oh, okay, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, this isn't the way these go. This is a fake interaction. That's not how it will do. The guy won't just suddenly realize that he was in the wrong if you're just laying into him. And you're showing that, like, this, by doing this fake text exchange where it's like starting with that, she's going to her friends and like just basically calling him racist and whatever it was, racist, sexist, whatever. And then going back and trying to like pull him over by being aggressive and then pulling back a little bit just shows that they're not interested in actually convincing people. You're interested in being right. And I said that in this debate. and the person's like, you're the person they're talking about. Like, no, I'm not. I'm on your side. This is just a bad tactic to get there. I am like, I'm not saying I'm a unique person, but there's not many people out there that can take shit day in and day out about people being told you're just a racist white boy. You shouldn't say anything. Shut the fuck up, white man. Like, people aren't going to take that. And it's going to change their politics because they're not going to go with somebody that's treating them like shit.
Okay. Well, this is the, you actually kind of hit the root of my concern and my problem. I'm like part of the mission here. There is a scenario I believe that is happening where the center looks at the left in general, not everybody. The center looks at the left and fights with the left. The left fights with the center. But when the right wants to fight with the left, what does the center do?
Well, oh, that's an extra question. The
Yeah,
center,
sorry.
yeah, no problem. It depends on the topic, but generally speaking, they go to the default, whatever the cultural default is, and oftentimes that's more of a right-wing default.
Okay, so let's say I'm a woman, and on the right, her life begins at conception. On the left, each individual woman should have bodily autonomy, and it should be between her and her doctor.
Sure.
What does the centrist do? How does the centrist resolve this? You have like life at conception and anything pre-birth, because we all know we're not out there killing live babies, guys. We just drink them.
So I think they will default to whatever their position is. And in right now, people will default to Roe. They try to honestly cut the baby in half as best of a knowledge as we can make it.
Well, you just called it out.
Yeah.
Can't cut a fucking baby in half. You can't cut oppression in half.
No, you can't. You can't.
So,
and that's why I think a lot, but you got to also come at it from the angle where, do they know that the oppression is happening? Are they aware of how it's happening? Or are they ignorant and it's not necessarily a need to be educated because that's elitist. It's more of like, what is their worldview? Find out what their base worldview is and go from there and try to articulate your values or your solutions in a way that aligns with their worldview. That is the best way to go about it.
So, like, let's say, I'm going to give you two examples. I am a white miner in West Virginia, or I am an inner city kid in Baltimore.
Okay.
Tell me about white privilege.
To both groups?
Are you going to do it the same way?
No, you're not going to do it the same way. Not necessarily.
The media does it, and we try to do it, and we demand it be done. You must accept this white privilege or not. Or you must accept this center or not. It's just my way of juxtapositioning why the extremes, which is somebody not liking the term white privilege and somebody living in poverty.
Right. Oh, okay. So wait, so in your example, was the black kid didn't like the white privilege term?
Well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect the black kid. It doesn't affect the white person in West Virginia. So when that argument,
but it does.
It explains a problem.
Yes.
And so it only explains a problem to somebody that sees it as a problem, which is exactly what you're saying about the word racist.
Yeah.
So when we try to have one uniform way to discuss things, it makes it impossible. It's not possible.
Yeah. I don't think that we should have one uniform way to discuss pretty much anything. I thought I was clear on that. I just think
No.
Oh, okay.
You weren't saying that. I'm saying that is something we run into.
Yes.
Is we get these talking points,
Gotcha.
and we need to walk past the talking point, I think, to actually get anywhere. And
for sure.
If I am, so I mean, I have had more privilege that I can even like walk through to help explain all the failures I could have and still get to where I am. And I know that, but my dad doesn't know that. And telling him, who was a bootstrap guy, that would be his argument. You know, he got where he is because he worked harder. Whatever. Your access to capital was a huge difference. Your ability to fail and still have a safety net was a huge difference. Your spawn point was a difference. Like,
sure.
You were third generation in a family business. But that is insulting to him, because when I say that, what he hears is, you're saying I didn't work hard.
Yeah. I think there's different, and this is why these conversations are just in general hard. And what we should do as anybody that's trying to help people understand how to convince people of their positions from the left-wing perspective or left perspective, whatever you want to call it, you have to narrow in on certain cultural, and this is what I call them. This is not a term. I don't know if there's another term for it, but this is what I call them: moral panic buttons. And what I mean by that is that there is a button that everybody has on any kind of conversation that if you press it, they'll just shut their brain off and it will not listen to anything you say. So in your example, that is hey, you didn't work hard, or you had certain advantages that you're not thinking of.
It could be
right?
anything.
And it could be anything, right? It could be that for somebody that's talking about, let's say, immigration, for example. Anytime you bring up, well, the wall doesn't work, that's not intuitive. And to them, they're thinking the wall is the same thing as them putting up a privacy fence around their house, and that helps keep out bad people. That's how they look at it, right? So what you have to do to get into the thick of it in order to get past these kind of issues is that you have to avoid pushing any of those unless you kind of have to move the conversation forward. So, for example, on the immigration one, right? I had a debate with a person, and I'm like, okay, we're not going to agree on the wall. What can we agree on? That's how I opened it exactly. And as soon as that person's like, no, we need the wall, I'm like, okay, then I can't get anywhere else with you on this, so I don't want to talk about this topic anymore. Can we find something else? That's how I approached that particular conversation.
Yeah.
With another person.
Discipline.
Yeah. Discipline. It takes a lot of discipline. You can't just lay into people. Or you have to be able to understand yourself where a conversation is productive versus where it's not productive.
And I think I was just laughing at myself a second ago, because I really do have the philosophy of like trying to get somewhere in a conversation, but I'm also like an emotional, mentally ill creature who gets triggered over some shit. Yeah. And so like, I know there's times where my intention is to get somewhere, but then I'll get sidetracked. And I am like a stickler for wanting to use words like Nazi and fascist and racist and anti-Semitic and genocide when I feel they are appropriate. Now,
sure.
I do understand the argument of avoiding these trigger words, but I don't know how to like manage this, because a lot of times these things, again, it's part of a playbook, not an actual discourse. Like when you have factual information, discrediting it is the goal. Like the Mueller report is a pretty good idea, a pretty good example of a very effective one, right? A lot of people will say the Democrats investigated Trump the whole time he was in office. That's almost like an accepted statement nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Who appointed Mueller?
That would have been, was it Barr at the
Rod
time?
Rosen,
Rob
Rod Rosenstein.
Rosenstein. Yeah.
Who appointed him? Trump.
Trump.
So which Democrat was involved in starting the Mueller investigation?
None. Not
Well,
really.
why is it accepted narrative that the Democrats investigated Trump?
Well, that's narrative building, right? Because
But
Democrats
it's
were itching
accepted as reality.
because Democrats were itching to do things, and there was calls for investigating Trump and all this, that, and then they did it, and because they said to do it first, blah blah blah.
Well, wait. Well, here's the next part of that. The Senate report that does detail a lot of the same things in the Mueller report was a Republican-led committee.
Yeah.
So was that the Democrats? And so this is the thing about how the actual most agreed upon narrative isn't even real. And so we're constructing things based on a house that doesn't even exist. It's like fake. So I feel what I'm doing a lot of times, I almost feel like I'm belittling people when I talk to them because I just keep asking, like, what do you mean? Or why? Or what does that mean? Because they'll say, I mean, it happened earlier, the left cancels the right. Okay, what do you mean the left cancels the right? Well,
Yeah, you have to
look at what happens on Twitter. Okay, what happens on Twitter? And then you have to walk through explaining, like, oh, you're saying people are getting banned from TOS.
Yeah.
And you're asserting that there's a lean to it. Do you have anything for that? And then they give me details, and that detail says more Republicans think they're getting censored than Democrats think they're getting censored. Okay,
Right.
so this is just proof that your emotions are this. So then you literally have to deconstruct the left censors the right, all the way down to the left censors the right. You really mean Twitter censored Trump. And somehow that's the left, but you can't explain how. And so cancel, what does cancel mean? Like almost every word in a sentence is becoming a thought terminating cliche.
Sure.
If you're going to talk patience, it's to me where my biggest patience is just knowing that what I say doesn't matter, only what they hear matters.
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to juxtapose that with when I say the word fascist, everybody shuts down.
Mm-hmm.
When I say Nazi, everybody shuts down. But the term for what is going on is fascism, and the proper label that I could.
But it's the same. It's the same thing with racist. People have fascist equals Hitler equals evil, which is true, but it's more to it than that. It's a series of things that culminate into an autocracy led by a either one party or one individual based on violence and traditional norms and purging society of quote unquote the unclean. Like that is the goal of fascism. Fascism is to bring everybody into one single polity by disposing of anybody they deem unclean, and that can be anything from what Hitler did to everybody versus what people are trying to do in certain places in America and elsewhere. So, but is it important to say that it's fascist, or is it important to just call out the evil that it's being done?
How do you do that?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about. So if we're talking about so if we talk about things like Black Lives Matter or something like that, then we can be like, statistically speaking, X, Y, and Z is true. What do you want to call that? Because I don't care about the label. Do you care that it exists and you want to stop it? That's where I need to know. Because if the answer is no, or you equivocate and say, well, maybe they shouldn't commit as much crime, blah, 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 then you're not going to get, then you know where your impasse actually is. But if you just say, well, that's just systemic racism, we got to stop it, and that just shuts them off, you're not getting anywhere.
Okay. So earlier we were listening to, this is where I just struggle because I agree with you. Like, but there's also times where I feel this is being weaponized. Like there is a reason to make the, again, conspiracy mind, but come with me. There is a reason to get people to not say these specific words I'm about to list that all tend to be one group of people: genocidal, racist, anti-Semitic, fascist, and Nazi. They all tend to be in the same group, right?
Sure.
So that one group would benefit by never being able to say those words usefully at all. I think it's fair to say. I'm not saying you don't have to admit there is an NWL out there, but I think it's fair to say there is an argument to be made that not using those words specifically benefits one group regularly.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. I think there is going to be a time and a place where you just call it out for what it is, right? Richard Spencer, for example, he's a Nazi. Everybody should be able to agree that he's a Nazi. If you don't agree that he's a Nazi, then we have other problems. Then we have to talk about why you think he's not, right? I think on
you call everybody a Nazi.
Yeah, that's the problem. And people do misuse terms, and people don't understand the, like, you know, if something is a Nazi became a stand-in for authoritarianism.
Let me just stop. I don't want. That's how easy they have it.
Right. That is how easy they have it.
So easily. Like,
and that's
I could
because
derail
of
any
misuse.
progress in a conversation with just doing that. So by me saying you say everything's genocidal, you overreact to everything.
Yeah.
Look at this one example of this one person screaming, you all are that way.
Yep.
That's the same as the Democrats investigated Trump. It's the same as the left is censoring and canceling the right.
Right.
Pretty much the foundation of the entire, of about 30% of the population lives in an existence that I can take apart brick by brick, but it's still their existence. So if I want to talk about the dangers of it being a fascist, right? Only way for me to do that is to either use the term that encompasses all of what we listen to, and I was going to pretend like I'm smart and shit, but they said it, like all of the 14 points from Umberto.
Yeah.
Like, how do you either say fascism or you have to address one at a time?
I think, again, I think this comes down to who we're talking to, what we're doing, what medium we're doing this in, and everything else. And I think it's like, if somebody's like, oh, well, you call everyone a fascist, right? And then the retort to that is, if you're face to face, is like, no, I'm calling this specific thing.
They don't care.
I know they don't care. That's not about them.
They get 100 other people to brainless. But wait,
but
this is why I'm saying it benefits them. They get 100 other people to brainlessly turn off the word.
Yeah.
And so your explanation is on deaf ears. They've moved on to the next person, where
that's going to be true to some degree.
They're going to get, their growth is faster than ours.
And that's partly because, you know, the lib left alliance is kind of opposed. It's like opposing magnets to a degree. There's a little bit of tension there, right? Then of course liberals are like, they're like, hey, you can't call that person racist. What have they done that's racist? And then you have to explain it, right? Because again, not everybody knows every single piece of information that happens.
So let me show you why this is so scary and dangerous. Again, I see everything from what's going on right now to how what's going on right now actually creates what's going on 3 years from now.
Sure.
So 6 months ago or so, Destiny, get a little clickbait. Destiny sat down with one Nicholas Robinette Fuentes. and they shared a meal together. Now, we called him a Nazi. What happened when we called Nick Fuentes a Nazi?
I don't know, because I haven't paid attention to much of what
Okay.
Destiny's done, to be honest, in this regard.
Okay,
Simply
so
because there was a lot of drama farming happening along the same time, so I haven't caught up.
okay, chat. What happened when we called Fuentes a Nazi? What'd they say? You call everybody a Nazi, and then they start to pick apart. What Destiny did was, if you didn't hit every single point to justify to Destiny that Nick was a Nazi, he wouldn't use the word Nazi. It's not useful to use that word. Well, who's it not useful to use that word for? Well, not the left, because the left sees somebody who says they're a centrist and an ally hanging out with a Nazi. The left believes you can treat Nazis as Nazis deserve to be treated. Well, what do you do with people that dine with Nazis? What do you do with people that platform Nazis? What do you do with people that help Nazis? And then what do you do when you tell those people, why are you dining with Nazis? They don't answer why they're dining with the Nazi. They say, everybody says Nazi.
Yeah.
Who'd that benefit? The Nazi.
It clearly benefits the Nazi, but that's what we have to deal with because of how evil Nazism was. This would be true of anything, that any kind of genocidal thing. It's going to always be that, because people do not want to believe that other people in today's time frame are these abhorrent evil things, because then they have to deal with what the facts of those are. So they're going to be dismissive of it regardless.
Okay.
That's why Groomer is effective. It's the same thing.
I agree on if we're looking at it as a macro, I will agree it will probably not change the total line.
Yeah.
If we look at it in the micro of each conversation, I don't agree with you. And I can only do that individual interaction at that time. I cannot do the macro. I only ever get to do the micro.
But
so when I say, when I say it doesn't matter, I'm doing, okay, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, if you're on a debate with people publicly, then you are engaging in the macro. So again, it's a time and place situation. And also, if you're in your own community, then you have a duty in your community to do things that try to move the community along in the direction that you want. You don't want everybody to suddenly hate you because you got too angry at somebody that they like. Like it's really a time and place thing. Like if it's a passing person that's screaming racist stuff, you call them a Nazi. I don't care about that. Like, I don't think anybody would care about that. You call everybody Nazi. Well, who gives a shit? That guy's being a racist piece of shit, right? Like, it depends. I think this is more depends on mediums that we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. This is not an either or binary type thing. Sure. All these things probably exist in some sort of spectrum continuum. So the thing I worry about is how I said it earlier. When I have the sign shop, even when it's not beneficial, sometimes you have to set the standard and you have to set the process so that it can become scalable.
Sure.
Nothing becomes scalable before it is. So if I'm looking at an individual, whether it's the panel or an online interaction, if I'm talking to another community and their person always says in their community the word Nazi doesn't mean anything, then when I say Nazi, because that's the description that best suits the person, and they don't like the description, there is a give and take of not using that word acquiesces to not using that word, but that pushback that might be very uncomfortable does start to create a pattern. And through that mass duplication of small effort, often can eventually defeat something much larger. Like, I think it was Zig Ziglar, sales trainer, used to say, you do anything long enough, a ratio will appear. If you're looking to have an outcome, once you know the ratio, you can figure out the activity that's required to hit the number that the ratio gives you. So if you succeed 90% of the time and I succeed 10% of the time, I know I just have to do it 100 if you're only going to do it 10. So through duplication, that small inconvenient action does lead, it's the tortoise and the hare, I guess. Like, I can't make a difference in this conversation, and I can't make a difference in this conversation, and I can't do it over here either, but the combination of those three can.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that.
So it's tough. What we choose to put our patients to, I think, dictates what path we're going to take on that. Like, my patience tends to be the individual more than the system. The system's fucked up, but fixing the system doesn't change the individual. So, like, yes, vote, yes, laws, yes, this. But none of us individually control any of those. And I give somebody tools to make their existence in the system better without telling them, like, I guess, tone policing. Like, I don't believe in slurs, but I don't tone police them. And at the same time, I don't believe in tone policing words that accurately describe things just because they trigger emotion. And it's a tough line to walk because I'm always the enemy.
Yeah.
That's where I'm not a centrist, but that's where the centrist sits, which is why I empathize with the situation. Like, an incrementalist often wants progress, enemy of the people. That's fucking hilarious. That would make a great shirt. F-bombs, enemy of the people. It's hard to navigate as a centrist or incrementalism, like for IRI or WIC or anybody that sits in the center that's like, look, you want universal health care. The opposite argument is, so you want to get rid of all the jobs at every healthcare company? Obviously,
yes.
That's not.
No,
so,
just say yes. At some point, you just lean into it. You're like, yes, I do. Why is that bad? Explain to me.
Actually, you'll still need a lot of those mechanisms. You'll need all of the tools of the private industry. So it's so not as simple as any of that. And so,
yeah, although scale, at least in this example, scale will eliminate some jobs. We have to deal with that.
So if we take the white person in West Virginia who's got a coal job, who is part of a union, and they live like low, like just above poverty.
Sure.
Their education system sucks. Their infrastructure sucks. Like, there's not a lot of like, it's a lot of mindset like you're going to find in an inner city Baltimore. Like, it's that trapped mentality from the system. Both of those are because of the system. We all know all we're doing is arguing to help the system. So whether you're that person in either situation, dictating what you say and how you say it isn't really going to help, but being very specific, using words, and this is why I guess I should yell it. Okay, I'll make alert. I have a realization. I have to yell at people that use the word Nazi wrong.
Yes. Yes, it requires us to call out. It does require people to call out others that misuse the term. That's true, and that will engender people more to believe you if they know who you are.
Yes. This would work if I had thought of it as a tactic. So, well, I mean, if you think about it, technically, what you would be doing fundamentally is, even though I agree with the sentiment of the person saying Nazi, by holding them accountable for the word that does make my job harder when I use it in a like justifiable way.
Yeah.
It works to hopefully get them to better understand, like, that's like, if you're using it as a feeling, please use a different term because you are watering it down.
And that's what I tried to say earlier, is that a lot of people during the Bush administration substituted any policy that Bush didn't like as authoritarian, which was fascist and Nazi. Like, that's the emotional arc that went through, and a lot of people are just tuned out because Bush say a lot of things about George Bush. A fascist isn't necessarily one of them. You know, like he didn't try to undermine, he did things that were very like, hey man, that's violating some civil rights. That war was evil. It still wasn't fascist.
Yeah, you're a war criminal.
Yeah,
that's pretty simple.
You could, yep. That one is one that has at least more backing than the others. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it does have more backing than the others.
Okay, so the other thing I guess that serves to do is increase the likelihood that I'm seen as a good faith actor from somebody that would fight against the term Nazi.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that. But again, it's time and place situations, right? Like, you can't do it every single time, so I don't expect people to. And I'm not even arguing against people that use fascist for every third word. I'm not going to tell them. I'm going to say, hey, this isn't the right thing to do, but I'm not going to be like, I might even say you're making our job harder. But that's it. That's about where it will go. Well, I'm not going to like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's the better way to look at it than shit on people for using it wrong, because then I'd just be aiding and abetting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's this level
so
of
hard,
nuance that's tough to get to.
Yeah, it is so hard to do. It really is. Like somebody in your chat says, who says you can't call a socialist a socialist? Like, that's the right wing has the same thing. They called Obama a socialist so many times that people are like, hey, socialism is a good idea. No one knows what socialism is. Nobody's using it correctly. So it's meaningless.
Well, but okay, again, so I'll give you my conspiracy. I guess I brought it up enough. I'll give it to you. How do you know anything about Gamergate?
I do know a bit about Gamergate. I don't know all the in particulars of it, if that makes sense. I don't know who all the actors were. I know what happened, what triggered it, and then it blew up and what that meant. But I couldn't tell you who Zoe Quinn's ex-boyfriend was. I don't know his name. I don't know every single journalist that was involved. There you go.
Yeah, no, okay. So, to me, Gamergate 2012, 2013 corresponded with the beginning of what we knew as Cambridge Analytica.
Was it?
Yeah. Their first campaign, I think, was 2013 in Haiti. They started a revolution somewhere basically in Africa through social media campaign.
Okay.
I don't know if it was named Cambridge Analytica, but that's the beginnings of it. So, but the thing that's interesting is Gamergate was anybody that was around back then, and it wasn't me, I just studied it. Anybody that was around back then, if you ask them who the two biggest players were, you're probably going to get Bannon and Milo.
Mm-hmm.
Bannon and Milo, which scares me how big those two names are right now. Yeah. It's just scary as fuck.
Breitbart had a whole section on it.
So what they did, I believe, between Reddit and 4chan, that was them working out how to use bots, how to use troll farms to boost narratives I mean, it's these same players, and we've gone over evidence where they did have tons of bot accounts helping to like boost Reddit posts or to repost certain things so that it would always stay there. So these players started in 2013. Then jump all the way ahead. 2016, Trump was running out of money in his campaign, and he went to the Mercers, and he asked for money from the Mercers. And do you know what happened from that? Do you know how that went?
They essentially contracted out Cambridge Analytica to do what they were going to do for Ted Cruz, but I don't know what happened in the interim.
Right. So the Mercers said one condition: you have to hire our vice president of Cambridge Analytica, Steve Bannon.
Was he vice president? Wow, I didn't know that. I knew he was involved, very connected with the Mercers, involved with Cambridge Analytica. I didn't know he was a VP.
So the thing that scares me is we talk about an algorithm as if it is a thing, right? Like it's like Microsoft Windows is a thing. When you use Windows, it's the same as when I use Windows. But your YouTube algorithm isn't my tube algorithm. So we talk about it like Windows and the algorithm are the same thing. So the problem is we look at when the conservatives fight against something, when you want to destroy something that is an individual liberty, you have to make it a social contagion of some sort. Like it has to become a demon, and it can't become individualized demons. They're transing the kids. Who's transing the kids? How does a kid get to a doctor? Just explain to me that interaction. Does the kid go to the doctor themselves? Did they see an ad and they went to the doctor and they paid for it? Is there a van picking them up? Like, explain to me the process of kids getting trans. And they use these manipulations to make an individual dynamic, a group dynamic, and a group dynamic, an individual. They're coming after your gains. They're coming after your country. So it's the same ongoing process. And they've been able to build an external infrastructure through the IDW and the way they operate, where as long as they continue to say the left is censoring them, every time they do something wrong and get held accountable, they can just hit that button again, and all of their people will just say left is censoring us. Yeah. So one individual Trump getting banned is the left censors the right. So they're able to take an individual action and make it the whole. But they're also able to take abortion or gender affirmation and make it an entire group. And this, I don't believe, gets done by accident. I think it is.
This is all done on purpose. They talk about, they reveal the plot all the time. Not James Lindsay, Rufo. Is it Mark Rufo?
Christopher Rufo.
Christopher, there you go. Christopher Rufo. So Christopher Rufo revealed the plot entirely. And he was like, we should call them trans strippers. We should use CRT instead of woke because it's critical. I don't like that. Race. Oh my God, stop talking about theory. That's some hoity-toity freaking made up bullshit that they want to control us with. Like they reveal the plot because they can't help themselves but to be giddy that they know what they're talking about. And so they're like, oh, I got to tell people because I'm so right. And they are right. I mean, they're wrong in the fact that these things are happening, but they're right in the fact that they can message, narrative shape, manufacture consent. The big one. Online social media makes it much easier to do so. 100%. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Like, it's so bad.
Would you say you can identify anything on the left that is a left-wing ideology that you could equate any of the ones that we could, the Q, to the stolen election, like this entire foundation of the Republican ideology right now that is built on a foundation of misinformation. Is there anything on the left that actually exists like that?
There's nothing one-to-one. I do believe that there are some people that take things that are actual theories, like things that are ways of looking at the world, and extrapolating them too much to the point that it becomes a conspiracy. It can become a conspiracy, right? It's not a one-to-one because there isn't a leftist version of Q. There's not. Q is the amalgamation of every single actual conspiracy theory that exists wrapped up into one thing, right? It's Satan Panic, it's JFK assassination, it's the Freemasons, it's the Illuminati, it's everything. It's the conspiracy that rules them all, right?
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you, I'm personally, I can't prove it to a degree that anybody won't have to spend 20 hours listening to me. But I firmly believe that Bannon, Flynn, probably Stone, a bunch of billionaires, probably Putin, I do believe they are utilized in the conspiracy that is Q. That it's all the same tools. Okay, so information has an has an infrastructure.
QAnon definitely has a psyops vibe to it. Like when I first got exposed to it, I'm like, you're believing Twitter fiction. That's what I called it, because that's the first time I was exposed to it was through Twitter. But yeah, I definitely say it has definitely a psyops vibe to it, which would put Flynn in there somewhere. I mean, that was his job. So
now, one more piece, and I'll get off the conspiracy. There's proof of Flynn getting hired by the Trump campaign from Bannon, getting paid a couple $100,000 through, I think, either Cult Ventures or another business. I can't remember I think it was Cult Ventures. And their specialty was identifying content creators that get the most attention through the algorithm and how to approach them to get them to share specific information. Literally building the IDW for the purpose of the algorithm. Joe Rogan talks to Tim Pool. Then Tim Pool talks to Peterson about it. And Rogan talks to Crowder. And then Crowder goes on Rubin and Shapiro talk about it. Then Shapiro and Rubin,
they all amplify each other. They're all part. Okay, so for people that do not know, a lot of these people are funded by the same small group of people. So Tucker Carlson's website wasn't self-funded. The Daily Caller, right, wasn't self-funded. The Daily Wire, not self-funded. PragerU, not self-funded. All these groups are actually connected to a degree and it's not necessarily a conspiracy, right? Everybody, the people that fund these things are all part of the same.
Not a conspiracy to you, fucking nut job. I'm just kidding. Like, yeah. I know the fact that you're talking. I actually have a graphic for this. Yeah, I have a graphic with Murdoch. I created it. Like, okay, there's the Republican Party, and inside the outer bubble is like Heritage Foundation,
right,
which puts out the Daily Signal. You got Breitbart. You have Washington Examiner and something else, and then inside you've got everything. Inside is a Murdoch bubble from there. Yeah. The Wall Street Journal, the Wall Street Journal now, Fox, and New York Post are all Murdoch. Inside of Murdoch, you got Daily Caller with Tucker, Daily Wire with Shapiro and D'Souza, Parler with fucking Bongino, Glenn Beck has The Blaze, Just the News is with Solomon. Like, it's an entire ecosphere of data all inside the Republican Party, though.
Yeah. No, that's very much true. And the reason I don't say it's like necessarily a conspiracy is because it it has the trappings of it, but it's not necessarily this giant nefarious thing where they're all just like secretly conspiring. It's more like you have rich individuals funding multiple things to create the infrastructure, and then a lot of people that actually agree with that jumping onto it. Like it's the not Tucker Carlson, wrong person. It's the George Carlin thing. I don't need to believe a conspiracy that
Yes.
rich people have similar interest. That's not a conspiracy. That's just facts, right? That's the same kind of thing here. One of the people in my chat brought up the fact that a lot of lefties buy into the Jewish question or the Israeli question. Israel controlling like a lot of things in the US, but that's not, that would be like one of the things, but that's not 1-to-1 that we were talking about earlier.
I don't think I don't think that's a lefty.
To
I would say
No.
Fuentes and Ye are out there
No,
doing the JQ pretty hard.
no, yeah, I was saying that's why I say it's not a 1-to-1. Maybe ideas about the patriarchy and all men conspiring to keep women down. Maybe that would be like the people that extrapolate it to that degree, right?
I could, yes. Okay. I could give examples. There are some extreme examples of small fringe groups. Well, some of them aren't that fringe, but there are some like left-wing separatists.
Yeah.
There are, people that say we should give all the land back to the Indians and let them do with us what they want. Like,
Yeah.
there are people that have those ideologies, but we're comparing 30% to 1%.
Yeah,
we're comparing
people the scale is different.
Power. Well, it's not even only that. We're talking about people with power to create laws and people that will never be in power until something major changes. Like, you don't have any black nationalists in Congress.
Yeah,
but you have white nationalists in Congress.
Yeah.
Very, very few at all.
Yeah.
So if you have this whole media ecosphere, the sad thing is it extends beyond that because it goes into the church, and that's not a conspiracy either. Like, Paula White was in the White House. She's the head of the evangelical movement. Look at where the evangelicals are today from 6 years ago.
That's true.
I know
there's breakdowns. No, there's breakdowns in that though. There's still liberal evangelicals, and there's been people that have been pushed out of the church. There's actually a great podcast episode. I want to say it's from the Daily. It's either from the Daily or from the Ezra Klein show. One of those two. And they actually interview a person that was pushed out because of his comments about Trump. Pushed out as in I can't shepherd this flock anymore. They're too far away from what
I've seen that. I actually think I've seen it. And while I do get that it's not like 100%, 85% of white evangelicals vote Republican.
Oh yeah.
It's their largest voting bloc. And if you just look at their spoken acceptable beliefs today and their spoken and acceptable beliefs 6 years ago.
Night and day.
And I don't think we can excuse that as like this is just something that exists. Like,
no,
while the media has done that, that church has done that, and that church was embedded in the White House. And I watched a presentation from 2015, just like a small little like in a church, like a little meeting, where this guy was talking about they go around and they recruit failing evangelical churches to create a new for-profit model and use politics for all of this. They literally went recruiting to radicalize churches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I say that, I sound like a fucking maniac. But
and that's the problem.
It's actually true.
Yeah. This stuff happens, and it's not like it's not out in the open entirely, but it's not actually hidden either. It's one of those situations where you kind of have to be exposed to it to understand it. So we can take this back all the way to 2005 5, 6, whenever Jesus Camp was released. Okay. Do you know the documentary I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like, this is an old one for
yeah.
all you Zoomers out there. Watch it, because it kind of like actually talks about all the stuff that we're talking about here, to a degree. Oh no, we lost him.
That's okay. You're good. I'm here.
Okay, cool.
That's
I
just
just didn't know if you
batteries.
could hear me. Gotcha. So, but in that, they're like, hey, I want Christians to be as radicalized as Muslims are for Christianity in the United States, as Muslims are in like Saudi Arabia for Islam.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's insane. You want people to die for Jesus? Like,
I mean, he died for us.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the
I'm just
thinking,
kidding.
right?
I'm obviously kidding.
Right. But that was 2006. And then, do I have the book? Hold on. I'm gonna step away for 1 second.
Okay. Yeah.
I keep this book handy because it opened my eyes to a lot of things. Does it come up right on the family, the secret fundamentalism behind the Republican part, behind the American power? Jeff Charlotte. He was invited to join this group of people. There is a Netflix documentary on it now that talks basically about some of the stuff that happened in this book. It is not hidden. These things are out in the open. K Street is a thing that exists inside Washington, D.C. It is a building where people go to fellowship about issues and bring God's morality to man in the form of the American government. This stuff exists. Dominionism exists. The Koch brothers exist. The Wilkes brothers exist. These aren't conspiracies. These are things that are actually happening.
Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to come up. I have an idea. So I want to wind this down, but
Sure.
I want to do it in a way that I'm going to give you something to think about, and then I want us to like see. I apply these rules all the time to everything, and every time people break these rules in my chat, we talk about it, and it normally comes back to, okay, I should have followed the rules. Rule 1 is everything they say is projection and confession. An example of that is a lot of your pedophile stuff comes from where? Where does it come from? The church. Biggest pedophile ring? Church. Point the finger, make a big yell, you're probably confessing to what you're doing. So you can extrapolate that to almost as big as you want. Like, there is those people are a global cabal that are billionaires. They're funded by billionaires, and they're trying to create a new world order and a world in their image.
Yeah.
Well, I can name those people. You just did.
Yeah.
And those are the people saying the other people are doing it. So it doesn't matter if it's on a small scale or big scale. Rule 2, assume everything people are doing, they're doing with intent. Assuming that people are dumb or ignorant gives them an excuse to get away with the thing they're doing. People can be both dumb and dangerous at the same time. People say Kanye's mentally ill. No, he's fucking racist. He's a Nazi. He might be mentally ill. I don't give a fuck. That doesn't have, I'm mentally ill. I'm not running around doing that. He's espousing Nazi propaganda as a billionaire. Stop saying he's mentally ill, doesn't know what he's doing. Trump's not dumb. So if you make somebody prove to you they don't know what they're doing, it's a better approach than assuming they don't know what they're doing and letting them get away with it. And I think it makes things so much easier, because if I assume you're doing something on purpose, I can ask you why you're doing it.
Yes.
If I assume you're dumb, I'm not going to bother to ask.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. I wouldn't make any addendum to it, but if you're interacting with like regular people that don't have a platform or that aren't engaged like you and I are. Some random,
Propagandists.
if you're not
Sorry.
engaged with if you're not engaged,
It's
with
not for
propagandists,
civilians. It's for propagandists.
Exactly. That's the only thing I would
There are propagandists and there are victims.
Yep.
To me, everybody espousing that the election was stolen and who is like somebody's aunt and not in politics and not make. If you're getting paid while you spread this information, that's who I'm talking about. If you're an aunt who believes this because their pastor told you, you are a victim.
Yep.
Those rules don't apply to victims, only propagandists.
Yep. That would be the only thing I would add to that. And we're on the same page. I knew you were, but I just had to say it for my audience.
That's a good caveat for me to say, because I do say everybody or everything.
Yeah.
And I always say, don't speak in absolutes.
And one of the things you can go about to, like, if you're interacting with like somebody that's just a one-on-one person with you or some regular person, ask them why they believe that. Get them to admit why they believe it. And if you can do that, then you're going to actually find out why they believe what they do. And you can tell if they're a person that's acting in good faith or not.
I think, acting that way allows you to basically be introspection for them that they might not do on their own.
Exactly. A lot of people don't do any sort of self-reflection at all. I'm guilty of it too. This is not a thing. I say these things because I realize this about myself and I still have problems with it. Don't like, to the audience, to you, to everybody, to my audience, like, I'm not saying I'm the best thing since sliced bread. I'm telling you about the hard lessons that I have had to personally learn and I'm still struggling with.
Well, I will say, here's to only shitting on people when they've proved they deserve to be shit on.
Yeah. Cheers to that, honestly.
All right. You take it easy. I'll talk to you soon.
You too, F-Bombs. This is a great conversation. Let's have another one sometime. Bye.
Absolutely. Take it easy.